live. Peraí, deixa eu... Aqui já entrou? Não, vai.
Peraí. Andrea.
Você trabalha no consulado ou só? Chato. Desculpa, eu sou certo, desculpa. Eu sou... Mas mandou um e-mail.
Hello. Attention everyone, Readings.Br, take 2. Good evening. Thank you all so very much for coming. For those who came again, thank you. I wrote because I'm nervous today. Today I'm not acting, today I'm nervous, so I'm gonna read. It's so great to be here and connect with you all again. It's been very tough. But we're here, we made it twice. But we only made it because of the support of our whole community. The nature of our work as a theater company is to create collective experiences. And as a Brazilian theater company, those experiences must present Brazilian culture. In order to keep going, we had to reinvent ourselves and move to a virtual world. Since March 2020, we hosted 33 happy hour online events with readings of works of Clarice Lispector by invited actors such as Zezé Mota, Renata Sorrá, Ana Carbati, Nel Lisboa, Guilherme Weber, Emanuele Araújo, Flávia Santana, and many others such as myself, Deborah Ballardini, Josana Vaz, and so many amazing artists. We innovated the online theater with the adaptation of our show Inside the Wild Heart to an online interactive platform, getting us the Best Reimagining of an Immersive Play Award by This Week in New York and featured at Forbes. The show had 43 presentations where me and Deborah Ballardini were online every day, helping people to navigate a whole new platform, a whole new technology. We presented Clarice's Day, a non-stop 16-hour event celebrating the centennial of the Brazilian writer Clarice Lispector. It was an all online event with several performances, readings, talks, films, and a special presentation of Inside the Wild Heart with a talk back with the cast. We gave classes, talks, participated in podcasts, lives. We got a rebrand by our talented hands of the multidisciplinary artist Yasmin Santana. Have you noticed our beautiful new logo? And colors. She gave us colors and logo. We were commissioned by the Downtown Life Fest, presented by Engard Arts and The Tank, to create a site-specific show part of this show that celebrates the New York Open Equity. So we created Metanoia, directed by Jonathan Hart McGuire, and assistant director by Haley Coleman, and performed by me, Andrea Forletti, and Deborah Ballardini. On top of that, we created the New York Brazilian Artists Fund, an initiative to support Brazilian artists in New York. With the contributions we got so far, we were able to support 12 artists with a one-time gift of $250. And we still have more 17 artists in need and waiting for support with the contribution. So if you'd like to support, come talk to me, come talk to Deborah. There's some QR codes you can scan and make a donation. And while we did all this, we watched countless hours of tutorials to be able to learn all the skills we needed to do all this. And that's why we're so tired. I wonder. So as you see, we have been working really hard, but all this was only possible because we were supported. We made it because of each and every one of you who made a donation, who participated, who invited a friend, who shared our post, who liked, who followed, who showed up. We made it because of the great help of Monica Vilela, right in the back, who has been our dear angel since 2018 with the production of Inside the Wild Heart, and gave us her production skills in every way she can, even now when she's a new mom. We made it because of the great artists around us who put their hearts and talents all this, like this beautiful artist here today. And now we bring you the first edition of our Readings.Br 2021. This event was only possible first and foremost with the funds from the Creative Engagement, supported by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council and the New York State Council of the Arts, with the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. Oh my God.
Legislature.
Legislature, thank you.
Right.
Yes. And administered by LMCC. This event is also supported by the Consulate General of Brazil in New York. Special thanks to Beatriz D'Alessandro. Where are you, Beatriz? Thank you so much. And Fernando de Oliveira Sena, thank you so much. The Consulate has been a great supporter and partner for many years, so really thank you. Rio Market Restaurant and Grill, who gave us some Guaraná. Andrea's Homemade Brazilian Goods. Yes. Monica Vilela, Haley Kuhlman, Dani Veronese, and a special thanks to our board of directors here represented by Angelica Walker. And a special thanks to our families and friends who not just support us, but put up with us with countless waters of, no, I can't go, I have to do the website, no, I can't go, I have to write the grant, like all this stuff. So I'd like to dedicate this evening to all of you who understand the power of the arts and who show up to support us. Thank you very much. And I said that I was nervous. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Andrea Forletti. I'm co-founder and artistic director of Group.Br. I'd like to introduce you Deborah Ballardini, also co-founder and so many things. Executive director, but like also so many things of Group.Br. have heart of Group.br. So for this event, we decided to give Clarice Lispector a little rest. We have been talking and reading and doing all things about Clarice for the last almost 6 years now. So we gave her a rest, and we also wanted to give the spotlight to Brazilian artists here in New York. So for this first event, we invited 2 Brazilian writers here, Camila Santos and Wendy Machado. And we asked them some Brazilian writers who inspired them, and we wanted to put this works in conversation. So Camila gave us a list, and one of them was Francis de Pontes Peebles, and Wendell. In her list, one of the writers was Machado de Assis. So, hi, Francis. I don't think she's hearing us. Probably not. You probably have to unmute one of them, or maybe this one. Hi, Francis.
Oi. Hi.
Ah.
I couldn't hear anybody.
That's okay. I figured, but I haven't properly introduced you yet, so it's all good. So what are we going to do? First, we're gonna hear Francis and Camila. So we're gonna have the inspiration and the inspired, and then we're gonna hear Josana Vaz reading from Machado de Assis in conversation with the works of Wendy. So just to introduce you, the first pair, literary pair. So Francis de Pontes Peebles is native from Pernambuco, Brazil, and the author of the award-winning novels The Seamstress and The Air You Breathe, which were translated into 10 languages. She is a 2020 Creative Writing Fellow in Literature for the National Endowment for the Arts and a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop. Her novel, The Seamstress, was adapted for film and a miniseries by director Breno Silveira on Brazil's global network as Entre Irmãs. And Camila Santos is currently an emerging writer fellow at the Center of Fiction in Brooklyn. Her works has appeared or is upcoming in Newton Literature Columbia Journal, Minola Review, and the New York Times. Whoa. Wow. Her work in Portuguese can be found in Ruído Manifesto and Coletânea de Poesias by Mulherio das Letras, United States. And in 2021, she will be attending a residency at Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. She has been awarded a number of grants, including a 2016 Queen's Council on the Arts World Feast, a 2017 Individual Artist Grant for multimedia project Masks of the Quotidian, founded by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, as well as 2017 mentee in the AWP's Writer to Writer program. So without further ado, Francis, please, if you want to give us a heads up about the work, just give some context for people, and I hand the spotlight to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. Thank you so much to all of the women who have organized this event, the artists who are reading here along with me. It's really an honor to be here with all of you. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. So I'm going to be reading from the first part of an unpublished story who comes to the United States by herself illegally. So she gets caught and she's considered an unaccompanied minor, and she is placed in a juvenile shelter in the United States. And so the story is kind of about the other girls that she meets in the shelter, none of whom speak Portuguese, and her attempts to kind of understand the sometimes absurd, sometimes really menacing environment of the shelter. And over the course of the story, we kind of find out why she is there by herself. So I'm going to read from the beginning of that. And I also want to say that this is in the point of view of the 14-year-old girl who is really a lot cooler than I am. So any kind of awkwardness is my fault and not her fault. So here we go. It's called The Land of Long Days. Everywhere there are rainbows. On the stairs to girls' block, around the bulletin board announcing our meals for the week, on the playground equipment where we sit during outdoor time. Sometimes Nayeli goes down the rainbow slide and we follow her laughing, like it's a big joke, us, pretending to be kids. There's a rainbow on the front of the building too, over the glass doors. Those doors are for monitors and counselors and for visitors who show up every week wearing sticker badges and standing too close together, staring at our bunk beds and our art projects, but never at us. In the back of the building is our door, gray metal with a buzzer and cameras and a fence too tall to climb. Everybody wants happiness, nobody wants pain, Alicia raps, but you can't have a rainbow without a little rain. I like the colors, Julissa interrupts. They're nice for little kids. We're not kids, I say. What are we, magical princesses? Alicia asks. Nayeli says nothing, like always. We sit in town square. There's little huts, FaceTime house, craft place, game room, painted in candy colors, and metal picnic tables all around. A rainbow village dropped inside a juvenile immigrant shelter. That's what our head counselor, Mr. Miguel, calls this place. Alicia calls it jail. The rest of us call it Sunset Harbor, because that's what's written on our paperwork and printed on our sweatshirts. It was meant to be for little kids, the ones the monitors call tender age. That's the reason for all the rainbows, the playground, the rec room full of toys and baby books. Nayeli heard that when Sunset Harbor first opened, there were protests. People didn't want a baby jail in their town. So now we're here instead, 50 of us. The youngest is 12, the oldest 17. We cover construction paper in glitter. Julissa prints Prom 2020 in big bubble letters and then cuts them out to stick on our centerpieces. We have to make 15, one for every table in town square. Then we'll paint a banner. Prom, 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 Alicia purrs. She's an engine, revving. Julissa rolls her eyes. Did they tell you the playlist yet? Alicia asks. Mr. Miguel's got to approve the requests, Julissa replies. Then we're fucked, Alicia whispers, so the monitor nearby doesn't hear her. It'll be Grease and top 40 shit. You have Tupac in your ears every day. We don't need to listen to him at prom, too, Julissa says. When she first arrived at Sunset Harbor, Alicia told her child advocate how much she loved Tupac Shakur. A week later, her advocate burned her an old school CD with beeped out versions of his greatest hits. Mr. Miguel held the CD for a few days and made calls to make sure it was allowed. Finally, he gave it to Alicia, who checks out a Sony Discman from the CD on repeat, over and over. Alicia scoots to the edge of her seat and does a body roll. Fingertips on the hips as I dip, gotta get a tight grip, don't slip. And you wonder why Mr. Miguel won't approve it, Julissa says. Loose lips sink ships, it's a trip. Julissa gives up on Alicia and turns to me. What kind of dress will you pick, Lillian? I want a big skirt, like a bride. I glance at Alicia, who's always ready to laugh at whatever comes out of my mouth. I have to think before I say things in Spanish. It's not too different from my Portuguese, but different enough for me to make many mistakes. What I want to say is, I need a dress that glimmers like a million little fish scales. Depends what they bring us, I mumble instead. Julissa wanted this party called prom very badly, so she convinced the counselors and Miss Susan, the lead monitor, to let her plan it. Julissa collected craft supplies for decorations, made a box for people to request songs, and even talked about sewing dresses until Mr. Miguel found a charity called Glamour Closet to bring us fancy clothes. We'll even have visitors during prom, 2 reporters who will watch and take notes. No real names used, no faces allowed in the photos. To show people, Mr. Miguel says, how Sunset Harbor fosters belonging. Prom will be good for us and good for the facility. A win-win, as Miss Susan likes to say. Julissa got the idea from the movies they show us on Friday nights. She's All That, 10 Things I Hate About You, Grease, Twilight, High School Musical. They all have this party called prom. So Julissa got it in her head that we would too. The counselors like anything that normalizes American life so that we'll fit in when we're released, if we're released. Most of us are sent back to wherever we escaped from. When that happens, all the work we do in Sunset Harbor to fit in will be a big waste. Dead girls don't need to normalize. That's what Alicia says. I say, maybe dead girls are the most normal thing around. Nayeli never says much. When she does speak, it's usually advice. She says Sunset Harbor is made to be shown off. She says it's like living inside the dioramas we made in science class, a painted model that's not the real thing. She says we lucked out being assigned here. Other shelters don't allow visitors or reporters because no one wants to see what happens there. Nayeli's the youngest of our crew, only 13, but she's been at Sunset Harbor the longest, 7 months. So she knows everything the rest of us don't. Like, if the counselors think you're crazy, they send you to residential treatment. Nayeli says that in those places, they pump you full of pills, put you on a plane, and send you back. Crazy means doing something in front of the visitors that makes Sunset Harbor look bad, like the boy who peed in the visitor walkthrough, or hurting yourself, like a girl who tried to cut her wrist with the kid scissors from the craft hut. The worst is if you mess up in a violent way, hurting another resident or counselor or monitor. Then you end up handcuffed in a staff secure shelter, which might as well be a straight ticket out of this country. Did you hear the story about the girl who got a fancy dress from a used store? Elisa asks, but doesn't wait for our answer. The shop owner stole the dress from a dead body, right out of the grave, yo. And it was full of that chemical, the one they pump into dead bodies. Formaldehyde, Nayeli says, startling us. Yeah, that, Elisa continues. So, homegirl danced all night. She really sweated it out. She body rolls again, and Julissa sighs. Suddenly, Elisa's eyes go wide, her body stiff. The chemical got in her skin, and she fell down dead at the end of prom. I laugh. Julissa flashes me an annoyed look. That's ridiculous. Like the fairy stories little Loca here tells, Elisa says, and flicks my arm. Stop it, Julissa warns. Anyway, they wash all the dresses. You don't know, Elisa replies. Well, you don't have to wear a nice dress, Julissa says, but we will, right, Lillian? Elisa's voice goes squeaky. Right, Lillian? Right, Lillian? I ignore her. Will they let us keep the dresses? I ask. Maybe, Julissa says and smiles. Julissa has the kind of smile that makes you want to smile back. You can't help it. She has straight teeth and pillow lips. She's the prettiest of us, with long black hair and eyelashes that are thick and dark, like a living doll. Alicia calls her Juicy J because she's got wide hips and a chest so big she has to wear XXL sweatshirts. Julissa knows that she's a doll, and she knows that's good and bad. Good because being a doll means people pay attention to her and want to help her. That's why Julissa can ask for a thing like prom and actually get it. That's why Julissa's lawyer says she'll be sympathetic in front of the asylum officer and immigration judge, because dolls are pretty and also harmless. A doll can't do things. A doll has things done to her. That's the bad side of being a doll. That's why Miss Susan's always the monitor on duty when Julissa takes showers, and why Miss Susan orders Julissa into her office and closes the door for special meetings. Even the rest of us, who aren't as pretty as Julissa, have been somebody's doll at one time or another. Maybe that'll end after Sunset Harbor. Probably it won't. Thank you.
Yes, please. I don't know what this means. This is like my nightmare. Yeah. Yay! Nope, I think it's good. All right, we got the microphone working.
You're gonna have to
Like this? Okay. All right. So thank you so much for that, Francis. And thank you for everyone who's here, who braved the rain, who came twice. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you to Andrea, Readings.Br, and Deborah, and Consulate, and all the support that we're getting. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of context about Francis and I, because she's the author that I chose as my inspiration. So I met Francis in 2019, but I had read her first novel, her second novel, The Air You Breathe, in 2017, I think. And I just fell in love with it. And then I went to look her up because I was like, who is this woman? And then I found out that we have this similar background. We're both from Pernambuco. We're both Brazilian writers writing in English. And I'm, particularly impressed with how Frances weaves in very meticulous research into her work without bogging the pace down of her narrative. And she also, most importantly, presents a side of Brazil that not many Americans know. She has written about the cangaço, the history of samba, class and racial dynamics in Recife, and it's all done in just beautiful, beautiful prose, and it's prose that I want to read slowly so I can savor like that brigadeiro back there. So as I said, in 2019, that's when we met. I was invited to read at a conference in Atlanta, and surprisingly, I saw that Francis was one of the participants, and I was like, oh my God. So, this conference was really special for me because I was going through a kind of I don't want to say writer's block, but a creative hiatus. And the conference was with all these amazing women. It was organized by a collective called Mulheres das Letras. So yeah, it was very invigorating. And then I got to meet Francis, and it was awesome. So what I'm going to read is a story called The Cadence of Silvery Waves. And Francis read an excerpt about a daughter without her mother, and my story is about a mother without her daughter. It's set in the 80s, it's set in Rio. The main character, Marisa, is a young single mother from Recife, and she lives in Rio. She works at a hotel. Marisa's daughter, Sabrina, lives back in Recife. She fills the void of not having Sabrina living with her by dating the hotel guests, which is not really allowed. One of these men, they fall in love with Marisa, and she's grappling with the decision of whether to embark on this loveless marriage with this man so she can have her daughter back. So in the short excerpt I'm going to read, Marisa is on her way to her shift at the hotel. She lived on a quiet residential street in Copacabana, but when she walked against the flow of traffic towards Avenida Atlântica, she was surrounded by motorcycles, packed buses, and pale yellow cabs weaving in and out of lanes. A block away from the boardwalk, men in Speedos sipped ice-cold chopes and licked off the foam from their upper lips. The air seemed to quiver, the water a lustrous sapphire under the afternoon sun. She preferred to walk on the right side of Avenida Atlântica, beneath the shade of tall, elegant buildings. On her left, past the coconut trees and beach umbrellas, past the volleyball nets and friscobol players, a mass of bodies lying on colorful towels glistened with sweat. Further ahead on the sidewalk, a little girl around Sabrina's age, feet caked in sand, licked a popsicle as she held hands with a woman dressed entirely in white, the uniform instantly giving her away as the girl's nanny. "Finish that popsicle right now, Juliana," she overheard the woman say to the girl. "And we'll need to rinse those feet before I can take you upstairs. You don't want your mommy getting upset with sand all over her living room." Marisa felt an irrational anger at this mother, would do anything to trade places with her. But even if she could afford a nanny, she would never stay inside on such a beautiful afternoon doing God knows what. She would put on a bathing suit, give the nanny a day off, and take her daughter to the beach herself. Last year, her sister sent Sabrina to Rio for a visit, a present for the girl's 7th birthday. Sabrina had flown as an unaccompanied minor. She was disappointed not to have been given a window seat, but once she landed in Rio, she marveled at the size of Marisa's apartment, claiming to Alicia over the phone that Maia lives in a dollhouse. But once at the beach, as soon as Sabrina got her feet in the water and felt the temperature of the ocean, she refused to go in. "Why is the water so cold?" She wore a blue and gold patterned 2-piece swimsuit that Marisa had helped her pick out from a fair near the apartment. "It's not like that back home," she complained. "We're further south and it's colder here," Marisa explained. "This beach sucks," and Sabrina plopped down on the sand, arms crossed, a round belly sticking out. She resembled an adorable angry Buddha, and Marisa wished that she could freeze time and keep Sabrina as a 7-year-old forever. "I want to see people's reaction when you, Missy," and she tickled Sabrina, "state your opinion about one of the most famous beaches in the world." Sabrina squealed in delight, allowing herself to be pulled into the water. Marisa held her daughter's hand as they floated, following the cadence of silvery waves rolling under their bodies, the water cresting white and breaking onto the shore. 2 blocks ahead, the flagpoles lining the hotel's entrance flapped in the breeze. She took a side street to the service door, running down a mental to-do list before her shift. Order flowers and champagne for the VIP guests, schedule the Corcovado tour for the Italian family, call the uniform department, and request an extra blouse for herself. In the changing room, she stuffed her street clothes inside a locker and slipped into a gray pressed skirt and white blouse. She had moved to Rio because the hotel was her chance at an actual career. "Don't waste this opportunity. Do it for your daughter," her sister had urged. The first months at the hotel were the hardest. She had perfected her rudimentary high school English with the help of an English-Portuguese dictionary, spending long nights reading the forgotten paperbacks left by the American guests. But as she caught on with her duties, Marisa was surprised at how much she enjoyed working at the hotel. She grew to love the fast pace during the holidays, the non-traditional hours, helping the guests feel welcome and safe. She quickly became one of the hotel's star receptionists. She took one last look in the full-length mirror behind the lockers, turning slowly around. One day, she would be promoted to manager and earn a higher salary. Her sister's help no longer needed. She would move to a bigger apartment, help Sabrina pick out the colors to her new bedroom. They would sit together at the table, and Marisa would help Sabrina with her homework. On weekends, they would go to the beach or to the lagoa and ride the roller coaster at Tivoli Park. She opened the side door to the lobby. The rhythm of her high heels against the marble floor echoed the words in her head. One day, one day, one day. Thank you. Thank you very much, Camila and Francis. So our next literary pair, I'd like to introduce you, first of all, Josana Vaz, which is a Brazilian actress, visual artist, and writer, graduating in performing arts from the Federal University of Minas Gerais. She started her career in Brazil when she was 10 years old in theater. After graduating, she moved to Rio, where she worked mostly in TV and film. She was an acting teacher and actress at the theater company Nós do Morro. Josana is currently living in New York, where she's began working predominantly in theater. So Josana is going to read an excerpt from Machado de Assis, how do I pronounce it? Alienist. So Machado de Assis was born in Morro do Livramento, Rio de Janeiro, in 1839 from a poor family. He was the grandson of freed slaves in a country where slavery would not be abolished until 49 years later. He barely studied in public schools and never attended university, with only his own intellect to rely on and largely self-taught. He struggled to rise socially. To do so, he took several public positions, passing through the Ministry of Agriculture, Trade, and Public Works, and achieving early fame in newspapers, where he published his first poetries and chronicles. Machado's work shaped the realism movement in Brazil. He became known for his wit and his eye-opening critiques of society. Generally considered to be Machado's greatest work, Dom Casmurro, Memórias Póstumas de Brás Cubas, also translated as The Epitaph of a Small Winner, Quincas Borba, also known in English as Philosopher or Dog. In 1893, he published Missa do Galo, Midnight Mass, often considered to be the greatest short story in Brazilian literature. American literary critic Harold Bloom included Machado de Assis in his list of the 100 geniuses of literature. Bloom considered him the greatest Black writer in Western literature. Just to give you some context in this book, it's basically about this psychiatrist and also crazy pseudoscientist who moves to a small city in Rio de Janeiro and decides to create a house where he would put all the mentally ill people in the city. But the problem is he kept changing his mind about what is mental illness and what is not. So I don't want to spoil anything, because if you haven't read the book, I highly recommend the translation in English. It's okay. And yeah, you're not going to be suffering. It's like, what the hell? It's good translation, and it flips. So this is like kind of still in the beginning of the book. What happens? Like he gets totally enthralled in his research that he keeps like creating out of his mind, and sends his wife to Rio de Janeiro with some other friends, and decides to create a new theory. So without further ado, Josana.
Hi. Now you see the size of the responsibility. So let's take a deep breath. Let's do it for Machado de Assis. A new theory. While Don Evarista, bathed in tears, went in search of Rio de Janeiro, Simão Bacamarte was carefully studying a daring and new idea, suitable apparently to expand the frontiers of psychology. All the free time that the care demanded by the greenhouse left him was little to walk the streets or walk from house to house, talking with people about 30 1,000 issues and underlining the words with a look that scared the most firm. One morning, 3 weeks later, when Crispin Soares was busy preparing a medicine, they came to tell him that the alienist was sending for him. "This is an important matter, he told me," added the messenger. Crispin paled. What important matter could it be but some sad news from the entourage and especially from the women? Because this topic must be clearly defined, since the chroniclers insist on it. Crispin loved his wife, and in the 30 years they had been married, they had not separated a single day. This explains the monologues in which she was now walking and that her servants heard many times. "Well now, put up with her. Who told you to consent to Cesare's trip? Flattered, clumsy flattered. You did it all just to flatter Dr. Bacamachi. Well, now put up with it. Yes, you will have to put up with it. Lazy soul, coward, vile, miserable. You say amen to everything, right? There you have the result, you stupid." And many other ugly names, which one should not say to others, much less to oneself. From here, to imagine the effect of the message, there is only one step. As soon as he received it, he put aside the drugs and flew to the greenhouse. Simon Bacamarte received him with the joy of a sage, a starched, circumspect joy up to the neck. "I am very happy," he said. "News from our people?" asked the apothecary in a trembling voice. The alienist made a grand gesture and replied, "It is about a higher thing. It is a scientific experience. I say experience because I do not dare to assure my idea from now on. Nor is science anything other, Mr. Soares, than constant research. It is therefore an experience, but an experience that is going to transform the face of the earth. Madness, the object of my studies, was until now an island lost in the ocean of reason. I begin to suspect that it is a continent." He said this and paused to observe the apothecary's astonishment. Then he explained this idea in whole. In his concept, mental derangement encompassed a vast area of brains, and he developed this with a great deal of reasoning, quotes, examples. He found examples in history and Itaguaí. But being as he was a little vulgar spirit, he recognized the danger of citing all the cases of Itaguaí, and he took refuge in history. In this way, he pointed out some famous characters. Socrates, who claimed to have a familiar demon. Pascal, who saw an abyss to his left. Mohammed, Caracalla, Domitian, Caligula, etc. An avalanche of cases and people with whom hateful entities and ridiculous entities intermingled. And since the apothecary was puzzled by such promiscuity, the alienist said it was all the same. The ferocity, Mr. Soares, is what is truly grotesque. Funny, very funny, Crispin exclaimed, raising his hands to the sky. As for the idea of expanding the territory of madness, the apothecary found it extravagant, but modesty, the main attribute of his spirit, did not allow him to confess anything other than noble enthusiasm. He declared it sublime and true and added that it was a new, rather worthy. This expression has no equivalent in the modern style. In those days, Itaguaí, which like the other villages and towns of the colony, did not have a printing press, had two ways of spreading news, either by means of handwritten posters nailed to the doors of the city hall and the headquarters, or by means of the ratchet. Here's what the second resource consists of. A man was hired for 1 or more days to walk the streets of the place with a rattle in his hand. From time to time, he would play the rattle, people would gather, and he would announce what was their concern. A remedy for fevers, the existence of a land suitable for cultivation, a sonnet, an ecclesiastical donation, the best sisters in town, the most beautiful speech of the year, etc., etc. The system partly disturbed the public tranquility, but it was preserved by the great force of dissemination that it possessed. For example, one of the counselors, precisely the one who had most opposed the creation of the greenhouse, enjoyed the reputation of the perfect educator of cobras and monkeys, being that in truth, he had only once domesticated one of those animals. But he was careful to make the rattle work every month. And the chronicles say that some people claimed to have seen bells dancing on the counselor's chest. Perfectly false statement, but only due to absolute confidence in the system that propagated it. So it is so, not all the institutions of the old regime deserve the scorn of our century. There is something better than announcing my idea. Putting into practice, replied the alienist at the apothecary's hand. And the apothecary, who did not significantly disagree with this opinion, said that yes, it was better to start with its execution. There will always be time to hit the rattle, he concluded. Simon Bacamarte reflected for a moment more and said, assuming the human spirit were a vast shell, my purpose, Mr. Soares, is to see if I can extract the pearl, which is why, in other words, let us definitively demarcate the limits between reason and madness. The reason is the perfect balance of all the faculties. Outside of it, everything is insanity. Insanity, and nothing but insanity. The Vicar Lopes, to whom he entrusted the new theory, plainly confessed that he did not understand it, that it was an absurd work. And if it was not absurd, it was so colossal that it was not worth starting. With the current definition, which is the one of all times, he added, madness and reason are perfectly discerned. You know where one ends and the other one begins. Why cross the fence? On the thin and discreet lip of the alienist flew the vague shadow of an intention to smile, in which disdain went hand in hand with commiseration. But no words came out of his egregious entrails. Science was content to reach out to theology with such certainty that theology did not finally know whether it should believe in itself or in the other. Itaguaí and the universe were thus on the brink of a revolution.
you. And now we're gonna hear from Andrea Machado. I love that we have two Machados, right? Like Machado de Assis and Andrea Machado. So,
Degree of coziness.
yeah. I believe it. I believe it.
Like before I got here, it was like, yeah, do it right.
So, Andrea Machado was born and raised in Aracaju, a small town in the northeast of Brazil. Her first novel, finished by the age of 12, got lost when her family moved to a new home. After that, the writer dedicated her time to build poems and short stories. After being published in São Paulo for the first time in 2017, she decided that it was time to pursue an old dream, to become a published writer in the New York City. As a writer, the project Love Notes to New York, a compilation of declarations of love from New Yorkers to the Big Apple during the pandemic. The book will be published this year. Andrea also had just finished her first novel that will come out in 2022. That's it. Yes.
I'm gonna need some help. Teeny tiny person. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good. Hi, everyone. It's no joke being up here. Yeah. First of all, big thanks to Andrea and Deb and to the General Consulate of Brazil and Group.Br and to my friends who came here tonight. I read The Alienist when I was in 16. Do not recommend that. You have to be a full grown up to begin to understand the struggle of reading Machado. I wrote this poem called Native, and it's a poem about being a foreigner. And it's a compilation of my thoughts as a foreigner, living in a different land, and as a writer, trying to access the hearts of my readers, which I consider also to be foreign lands. So here it goes. Oops. Okay. Native. I write before dawn, interrupting paragraphs at the first beam of sunlight. I procrastinate. I spell out emotions out on my desk. What time will you be back again? Fascist souls are running the world. What world? Don't take too long. Too long to what? To live. Lives have been lost since 2020. Pandemonium. I pour from this chest words I don't understand. Its language, such a novelty, even to me. I make no sense, but I rhyme incessantly. Unorthodox yet poetic wall of thoughts. Wounds and all, I'm loner and chaotic. Among other things, I am estrangeira. My heart seeks meanings of any nature, words, witnesses of this inner turmoil. I wish our native and foreign hearts to be the one who observes their collisions, to be the one who rehearses their lost anecdotes. Mayhem of stars I spin, collapsible cocoon. I wish I were born tomorrow, before others predict what it is to be me. This obscure ground of emotions my tired feet land on. Within every foreign soul, the embracement of constant change to my devoted readers and their noises, aspirations, and forms that I'm so intrigued by. I fear what I'm about to write, but I will not hesitate. These thoughts, if I take them slowly, I won't survive. So I immerse, contemplative, into the native hearts, which languages I don't speak, into the routines of writing, which wildness I fail to restrain, into the phonemes I adore, as my tongue gives them birth. I have come this far because I need to learn. Their mysteries, wounds, and routines cluster of narratives, stories worth being told. My audience, filled of merciful judges, their journeys, inhabitants of the blank page before me. If I could only see through their catastrophes, traverse them with no urgency, I would translate them into my own. I would earn, perhaps, the right to tell. Yet I persist, stubborn and optimistic, because I have nothing but hope. I am nothing but will. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm here thinking what we should do because unfortunately we have to wrap up pretty soon. So I'm wondering if someone has like a very burning question they would like to ask to the artists up here. If not, maybe we can have a quick chat. Yes, it's just we were planning to stay up to 9, but then like it was our mistake. The security person needs to leave at 8:30, and we want to respect that. So, does anyone have any like specific question or comments?
Burning question?
You do? Yeah.
I talk pretty loud. I'm a writer myself, and I would love to hear a little bit about the experience of both the writers and actors who are, and the difficulties of writing in a language that is not your first language. I mean, you're all fluent in English, but I would love to hear if there's what barriers there are. Or, does that make sense?
Oh, hi. Great question. Thank you for that. I think for me, I think that's why I write poetry in English. It's because poetry is a land of mayhem and freedom. It's like one of probably the only genres in literature in which you can explore and give yourself the permission as a writer to make mistakes and to cross boundaries that you didn't know that were there. But I also think that there's a sense of respect for the language, and English coming from a Latin language and English from an Anglo-Saxon origin. These are like two different territories. And I think there's a sense of sensibility and respect for the language and its nuances. So when I'm writing in English, I give myself the permission, but I also try to dissect the meaning of each word. Because when you say, I spit is one thing. It's just like the words, they have different tones. And when you're talking poetry to people, you want to reach their hearts. And if you're speaking their language, it's important that you hit them right. Yeah.
I have more trouble as an actor with the language than as a writer. As this language becomes the language I exist in the present moment since I moved in here to express myself and feelings writing, I think it's exhilarating. But as an actor, I will always, it catches me because of the laughter on the accent, because of the comparisons. Oh, you look like Sofia Vergara. No, you think I speak like her because I'm not speaking your language the way you think it should be spoken. So I'm always like, it's really hard to not be thinking of the words I'm saying and telling myself, just gonna do it right. You have to get this word right. And then I end up making a mistake because I'm so nervous that I'm not gonna deliver the proper word. So I think as an actor it's harder than as a writer. The boundaries, right? I forgot your initial question.
Well, first of all, it's worth saying that you were my Portuguese teacher in 2005 or something. It's just having English not being your first language and any obstacles I mean, everyone appears to be fluent, but I know from my own experience that you're not quite as fluent as someone who's a native speaker, and what kind of obstacles or advantages that might give, as we heard in the first answer.
Yeah, so for me, it's about the relationship that I have with each language, right? So Portuguese is my native language, and as a writer, it's and then English became a dominant language later, and it's a language that I primarily write in. So with Portuguese, it's like the language of the heart, and it's a language that I turn to kind of birth all these stories. And with English, it's more of like the language of adulthood and concreteness, and so that's kind of like how I approach it. But I used to be very rigid about this when I started writing, and I started writing in English kind of as a convenience because I was here already. I was already fluent, and at the time when I started writing, I didn't have any access to like writing workshops in Portuguese, so I just started writing in English. And I was very rigid in the sense that I was like, well, I am only writing in English, And now with maturity, I kind of do a little bit of both, and I go back and forth a lot. Like sometimes if I'm writing a sentence in English and a word to me comes in Portuguese, I just kind of let it happen, And then with revision, like that will, I'll shape the text in English. But I like it when Portuguese like seeps in. I think it's because it's who I am, right? I can't just not do that.
Francis?
Yeah, I think I came to the US when I was very small. So English was my dominant language that I learned in school. And when I would return to Brazil a lot, that was like the language of my family. And I learned that by listening. And so that became almost like music to me. I compare Portuguese to like the song that you hear and you can't kind of get out of your head, but no formal training in it. So for me, it's a little bit different in that I feel like, similar to Camila, where, English kind of dominates my work, but I definitely want to kind of capture the essence of the characters who are speaking Portuguese, even though I'm writing them in English. So it can be tricky. So I do like to put Portuguese in my work, but never just as like a sprinkle of it. It has to be something untranslatable. So if there are words like alpercata, which is like a leather sandal that you can't really, or cangaceiro, there's no translation for that. So my hope is that the reader will get the context through context, will understand that word and kind of flow with both languages as they're reading my work.
Thank you. That's kind of the Juno Diaz style of sticking in language. That's my question. Thank you very much. I will also just note that Aracaju is not a small town. It was introduced as a small town.
I know. It's just like in the northeast of the country, it's like the smallest state, but Aracaju is the biggest city in that state. But for the country, it's small.
Right.
It feels romantic when I say the small town.
Very, very nice. My name is Edson. I'm a Brazilian journalist. I really appreciate all the readings. And my question is how you guys deal with the fact that in America they put people who are not white in a box, like colored people. How do you guys feel? And probably they put you guys into Latin writers, how you guys deal with that. You accept it normally, and how you guys deal with the fact that you are not white and you are not Hispanic. You're Brazilians who speak Portuguese.
So we are often described as Latin, nowadays Latinx people. I particularly will speak from my perspective as a Black woman. I think it's very complicated due to the history of oneself. Like I was brought to this world. I faced racism. I faced prejudice. I didn't have not the same chances as a white passing Latino person has. And when we get here, we are just put in this box. I believe that this is a form of, continue the divide and conquer kind of situation, because that brings to the minorities here a sense of we are a little bit more special in a sense of, oh no, you are, how many times I heard that from Black people from America, oh, you're not Black, you're Latina. And then my whole history, which is part of me, is erased right there. So I think it's a very deep subject to go through, but that's just wanted to give you my impression.
For me, well, in Brazil, I'm considered white, and then here, I'm not considered white. I'm not sure, actually, how to answer your question, especially after everything that you just said about your experience. I feel that
You feel like you open yourself up to the experience of people like me.
Yeah.
Back home.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you definitely, when you experience being perceived as a non-dominant group, and then you go back home, you're able to definitely empathize, and you're able to join the struggle. Definitely, you're able to see things through a new lens that before maybe you weren't able to check your privileges. So I think immigrating and being seen as the other opens that up.
Yeah, great question. I think Camila and I are in the same boat. I'm like half white, half indigenous. Was white in Brazil. Here, it's just somewhat different, and it's just very, it's raw here. This pursuit to define which race you are, and we don't have that in Brazil. And I thought that was a good thing, but it's not. I guess I think it's important to know where we're from. But for me, particularly, was the struggle of being a Latin woman. And I think that's the main role of art, which is to demystify and to break the myth of this single story and the generalization of what people are. So I think that's pretty much what it was for me. It still is. It's hard, but I think arts are like here to do the work, the collective work. And when you find community, I think that helps a lot to understand the other side and what other artists go through.
Francis, I just want to give you a chance to answer, but I just wanted to let you guys know that it's 8:27 to wrap at 8:30. So I would love to continue this conversation. I was looking at the rain to see if we continue outside, but I don't think it's going to be possible. But go ahead.
No, I think the other women on the panel have said it better than I could say it. I think that Wendy is 100% right, that this is the job of art, is to show that we contain multitudes and that we are never just one thing. And so it's really inspiring, especially reading Camila's work. She really deals with that in-betweenness a lot of two cultures and two places. But it's very inspiring to be with these women here because I hope that through our work, we can show that. We can show a different side of Brazil, show a different side of being a Brazilian here in the United States than what people would expect. And that was what art is for.
Thank you, thank you. So unfortunately, we have to wrap up. Thank you very much for coming. On September 14th, we have another one with Brazilian dramaturgs. Yes, so save the date. If you are on our mailing list, you're gonna find out. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Você é o chefe de o nome?
And this is yours.
Eu sou jornalista e tem programa de jazz na nossa rádio entre 7 e 8 da noite. Jazz.
Eu estava tentando ajudar ele, eu sou um pouco surpreso. Foi muito jornalista que ele faz.
Obrigada.
Eles outra vez a gente saiu correndo.
Você sai correndo, eu comecei a falar com você,
E aí a gente.
Eu tô na sua. Eu não sei, agora você tem cartão. Não.
Claro!
Você tem cartão?
Tô sem.
Você tá no Instagram?
Tô.